Elegimos dedicarnos a la felicidad, porque la felicidad es la vacuna psicológica de nuestros tiempos. Las crisis son el momento indicado para reconocer nuestras fortalezas y descubrir nuestro ingenio para superar la adversidad. Hoy es tu momento de crecer, es tu momento de crear y de reinventarte. IBI es parte de tu equipo y trabajamos contigo para apoyarte y lograr lo inimaginable en tu organización. Apoyamos a los mejores líderes, a los que han elegido darlo todo por su equipo, por sus sueños, por su mundo. IBI es tu aliado. Elige la felicidad.
Bueno, pues listísimos para comenzar este webinar tan especial. Les quiero dar la más cordial bienvenida a todos. Mi nombre es Arlen Solodkin y soy directora del Instituto de Bienestar Integral y tengo el gran privilegio de pues estar trabajando cerca de TAL, colaborando con el doctor tal Ben-Shahar y Happiness Studies Academy por ya varios años. Y pues me da muchísimo gusto presentarles al doctor tal Ben-Shahar. Para quienes no lo conocen, tal Ben-Shahar es muy conocido porque impartió el curso más popular en toda la historia de la Universidad de Harvard, un curso sobre felicidad, pero es realmente el líder mundial en estudios de la felicidad. Ha logrado desarrollar toda una nueva carrera, todo un nuevo disciplina de estudio en torno a este tema tan importante que ha estado presente en las mentes de los filósofos más grandes de toda la humanidad. Tal Ben-Shahar creó el Happiness Studies Academy, la Academia de Estudios de la Felicidad, donde se imparten el certificado en estudios de la felicidad, y ahora en conjunto con Centenary University ofrece la maestría en estudios de la felicidad, la primer maestría en el mundo sobre este tema. Y es de verdad un gran honor contar con tal Ben-Shahar aquí en nuestro webinar. Tal, I don't see you. I hope you're there, but I want to say welcome, bienvenido.
Thank you.
Bienvenido a este espacio. Welcome to this special place for you. And we are deeply thankful for being part of our family and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Arlen. I'm very grateful for all that you're doing and for inviting me specifically today. Good to be here.
Thank you, Tal. Solamente quiero decir, para los que prefieren tener el webinar en español, tienen una opción de interpretación que pueden encontrar en el menú o en los tres puntitos donde dice más, y pueden elegir el idioma español. Está Iván aquí ayudándonos con la traducción. Así que voy a hablar en inglés. So the topic that we're about to learn about today, Talisa, it's a very important topic nowadays on a personal level and on a collective level as well. Yesterday, well, we're going to have elections in Mexico this Sunday. And I was very curious about the role, what happens with self-efficacy, what happens with this ability that people have to control something in their environment, in their surroundings, and to make something change in their life circumstances. And I decided to look at the World Happiness Report, and it so happened that the rate of votes in the countries that were like the three countries that are at the top of the well-being and happiness in the World Happiness Report have much higher levels of voting, of active participation in their electoral system than those countries that are at the bottom of the spectrum, or of the scale of the World Happiness Report. But it is a huge difference. For example, Finland has 72% voting rate. Denmark has 84%. Iceland, 80% of a voting rate. And the least, the last countries in this scale are Lesotho with 38%, Lebanon with 48%, and Afghanistan with 18%, which is a tremendous difference. Mexico is around 63%. And I was wondering, what is the role of feeling efficacious, feeling that you can contribute to make a difference? And then how does that translate into a better life for the person that feels that they can make a difference? And what does hope has to do with, with these findings?
So first of all, the idea of hope has been studied for quite some time by psychologists. Now, just like the case with happiness, there are many different definitions of hope. So we basically know what it is, but let me give a precise definition as provided by Richard Snyder, who's considered one of the founders of the field of positive psychology and was one of the most important psychologists of the 20th century. So Richard Snyder, when he defined hope, he said that it includes actually two elements. The first element is willpower. Having willpower, is about believing that you're, as you mentioned, efficacious, that you can do it, that, yes, I can, I'm capable, I have the ability to overcome difficulties, to make a difference in my country, and to determine my future. So I have hope in my ability to create a better future for myself. So this is the first one, it's willpower. Yes, I can. The second element is what Rick Snyder called way power. Way power is not just about, okay, yes, I can do it, but it's also about, and this is how I'm going to do it. And if this doesn't work, then I'm going to do it in another way. And without the way power and the willpower, we don't have hope. So let me give you an example of way power. Because mostly when we talk about hope, we talk about willpower. But what is way power? So I was watching an interview with Serena Williams a few years ago. And she played in Wimbledon, and she had just won after being down a set and being very close to defeat. And this is not the first time that she had won against all odds. And the interviewer asked her, Serena, how did you do it? And how do you do it? Coming back from defeat to win. And she said the following, she said, look, whenever I go on court, I always have a plan A. She has a plan A because she knows her opponents. And then she said, but if plan A doesn't work, I always have a plan B. And if plan B doesn't work, there's always a plan C. And if C doesn't get me what I want, then I have plan D. And on and on. In other words, she doesn't just go on court and say, yeah, I can win, or I can do this. She says, yes, I can do it, and here is how I'm going to do it. And if that doesn't work, this is the way I'm going to take, and on and on. So she creates alternative pathways. So this is hope, willpower and way power. In countries where people do not have either willpower or way power. In other words, when they don't have hope, why bother? Why should I go and vote? Why waste my time? Now, the thing is that by not going to vote, you actually reduce your power and you have less of it. So it becomes a downward spiral. I have no hope, so I'm not going to even try. And when you don't try, obviously you don't succeed. Now, this doesn't mean that they would succeed if they did try, but just the trying. I mean, because if you think about it rationally, Arlen, there are over 100 million people in Mexico. What difference is it going to make if you go and vote? But if everyone thinks that way, then, then you have very low numbers. And then it's really going to make a difference. So in order to make a difference, you need to have hope on a large scale when it comes to specifically voting. In the unhappy countries, vote is both a cause and an effect of unhappiness. So the lack of hope creates unhappiness, and unhappiness reduces hope.
Absolutely. So it becomes a downward spiral, as you said.
Exactly.
And it has to do also with the collective and with the personal, because at the end is your personal capacity to effect change in your life, and it's your action. It's taking action on a personal level, but you have an effect also on a collective level, and hope at a collective level. Right?
Yes. So, Arlen, I encourage people to vote, even if when you think about it rationally, your vote doesn't really make that difference. Why? Because yes, you're voting for your party, for someone you believe in, and you're also empowering yourself. You are giving yourself the message that I have agency, I have ability, I can make a difference, which then affects you in other areas of your life in an upward spiral.
Absolutely. And there is an important correlation also between optimism and imagination, which is what you are just saying, because when Seligman talks about human progress, he talks about optimism, which is, foreseeing a better future. And then you have imagination, which is the way power, the way power that you were talking about, imagining different scenarios and different ways of making a difference. And then it has to do with self-efficacy, which is that capacity of believing that you have the control to make a difference. So yeah, so I was very interested about it, and we don't have to focus on voting, the whole time, but I think it's really relevant to what we're living today.
Yes, and Arlen, I want to take this a step further because, Professor Martin Seligman, whom you know very well, he was, still is, your teacher and mentor, talked about when he introduced the whole field of positive psychology. He talked about how important it is to look at its effect, not just on the positive, but the field of positive psychology also affects how likely we are to experience depression or anxiety or other psychopathologies. Now, this applies, in other words, the field of positive psychology focusing on happiness, yes, it increases our levels of well-being, and it also acts as a buffer, as preventative when it comes to depression, anxiety, and so on. Hope acts in exactly the same way. So we just talked about how hope is related to happiness, because when I act on my belief that I have agency, if I come up with willpower and way power, that will very much lead to happiness. that upward spiral. But not just to happiness. Hope is intimately related to depression. How? The difference between sadness and depression. The difference between sadness and depression is that depression is sadness without hope. Depression is sadness without hope. You see, we all experience sadness often. I mean, I was sad today at least 3 times. You know, I opened the newspaper, made me sad. You know, yesterday, you know, my son wasn't feeling well. I was sad. You know, we experience it every day, normal. It becomes depression when there is no hope attached to the sadness. In other words, the introduction of hope into our lives, yes, makes us happier. It also prevents us from falling into depression. So if you look at the human experience on a continuum, where let's say on this side we have all the positive experiences like joy, love, happiness, fun, excitement, and on this side, the negative, we have sadness, anxiety, depression, anger, frustration, then you inject hope, you become happier. You inject hope, you become more resilient, better able to deal with hardships, difficulties, sadness, and so on.
Yeah, actually, hope is needed and is present when we are facing either challenges or when we're facing difficulties in terms even of achieving your own aspirations. So that's a quality that it's unique about hope, that it is present only. It's a positive emotion. Well, some people say, or some scientists say, it's a cognitive element. Some others talk about it as a strength. No, the VIA Institute has it as a strength, and others talk about it as an emotion. But it is always present when something can get better, and it is highly correlated with resilience, as you just said. And some people, you know, like there is a very nice quote that Desmond Tutu said about hope, that he said, you know, hope is being able to see that there is light despite all darkness. It whispers, you'll overcome this hardship, and it reassures us, soothing our minds by reminding us that life will improve.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And what he did, for example, in the life of, take the life of Desmond Tutu, you know, lived under apartheid, oppression for decades, and yet he never lost hope. Or people like Nelson Mandela never lost hope. And because they never lost hope, they continued to persist. Imagine if Nelson Mandela, when he was you know, arrested in the late 1960s, put on Robben's Island. Imagine if he would say, it's hopeless. South Africa is always going to remain an apartheid regime, and we're never going to introduce any change. There would be no change. It would become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But because he sustained that hope, because people like Desmond Tutu sustained that hope, it's only because of that they were actually able to bring about change. And by the way, this is why you see the hope characteristic extremely dominant where? Among entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs. Because, I mean, what do entrepreneurs do? They have a dream. They imagine something. And it's not something easy, because if it was easy, many other people would have done it. So it's something which is hard, with the odds, by definition, against them. And yet they have hope, which means, yes, I can do it. And here is how I'm going to do it. And if that doesn't work, this is what I'm going to do. You know, it reminds me of the story of the that I learned when I was in business school about the creation of Hewlett-Packard. So Hewlett and Packard were best friends. And they wanted to create a business, and they did. And the business failed miserably. And they created another business. Failed completely. And they created another one. And that failed too. It was only on their fifth attempt that Hewlett-Packard, as we know it, was created. In other words, they had hope from the outset. They believed in themselves. They believed in one another. And this didn't work, like Serena Williams. So they tried this and then this until they succeeded.
And there is always something that I think about. I wonder often that optimism is correlated with hope, but you can have high hope and you can also like not be an optimist in nature. You can imagine that something can get better, but you can have like a pessimistic outlook in some ways. But when you have hope, you continue moving forward. So it is that relationship between hope and optimism it's quite tricky. And I could say that you know, from some of the readings that I've done and also my own experience, oftentimes what I see is that, you know, people who are very desperate about the situation that surrounds them or the situation in the world decide to act because they have this high level of hope, but because they are also seeing very vividly the suffering that is happening in their lives. And that propels action. It's the suffering, not only the optimism, that propels people to act when they have hope. Of course, when they don't have hope, then, as you said, why bother, right?
Yeah, and you know, Arlen, you bring up a very important point, and that is the distinction between detached hope or grounded hope, or in general, being connected to reality or being detached from reality. Because you see, just saying, oh, everything is great and amazing, and, you know, looking at the world through, you know, pink-colored lenses, glasses, that's not helpful. Looking at the world realistically, whether it's looking at the suffering, and then saying there is something we can do about it. That is the right combination because it's the realistic combination. It's true that there is a lot of suffering. That's real. And it's true that we can make a difference. That is real too. Just as an aside, so I've been asked over the past, 20 years. So what has changed for you, for me, in terms of my understanding of the field of positive psychology? So, I taught my first class at Harvard exactly 20 years ago, 2004. And people ask me, what did you teach then and how is it different today? And I say, well, a lot is different. There's been a lot of research over the last 20 years. Positive psychology as a field was only founded in 1998. So it was, a baby in, it just started elementary school in 2004. Today it's in college. In graduate school, actually. So a lot has changed in terms of the research, but one of the things that really changed in terms of my understanding, and I think it has less to do with the research, but more to do with me simply becoming older, is the whole idea of expectations. I mean, if you think about it, hope is about having positive expectations for the future. In the past, when I started to teach and I looked at the whole idea of expectations or hope, my basic approach was that hope is good. Having high expectations is important, period. Today, I'm very much for high hopes and high expectations with a strong dose of reality. Let me give you an example. So let's say I join the certificate program in happiness studies. And I say, I'm going to really become an expert in happiness studies. And my expectation is that at the end of the program, I'll be happy all the time. Or after I read this book and that book and go through these workshops and become an expert in the field, then I'll be happy all the time. That's having very high expectations, but unrealistic expectations, because no person is exempt from hardships and difficulties and challenges. So what would be the realistic expectation? Having high hopes with a strong dose of reality. It would be saying, I'm going to go through this course or read these books, become an expert in this field. I'm definitely going to become happier as a result of it. And I'm going to become more resilient, or my psychological immune system is going to grow stronger. And a strong immune system doesn't mean we don't get sick. A strong immune system simply means we get sick less often. And when we do get sick, we recover more promptly. This is realistic. This is what I can hope for. Not for being happy or experiencing a high all the time. Same with relationships. So I enter a relationship and, I fall in love and, we get together, we tie the knot. And then we're expecting to live happily ever after. Why? Because that's what the movies tell us. That's false hope, false expectations. There is no relationship where they live happily ever after. There are always ups and downs and challenges and difficulties. What's realistic hope, realistic expectations? Is when I say to myself something, I'm in love. This is a wonderful relationship. We're going to continue to learn and grow together through difficulties and hardships because they're inevitable in every relationship. So being realistic is a very important addition to the whole idea of hope. Otherwise, we have false hope, and otherwise, in the long term, we'll actually become less happy rather than happier.
Yeah, and as I'm listening to you, I remember this morning where I was part of the masters in happiness studies this morning with you in class, and one of the participants mentioned, "Wow, this is such an amazing program because I am learning about new habits that I can cultivate every day, and it allows me to practice." So she had a sense of control. That's what, she and other students were mentioning, like we have a sense of control over our environment, over the choices that we make on a daily basis. And that gives me hope that I can create a better life for myself. And even it was mentioned by people who were sharing that they have been battling with habits that were damaging, for their health. So it gives them hope just to be able to have a sense of control. And even in the tiny details of your life, if you have that routine that allows you to feel that you can really change your life little by little, that in itself creates an enormous opportunity to live a better life, because hope is connected to many different benefits.
And Arlen, what you're describing now, and what our students said this morning, points also to how we cultivate hope. So, I often talk about the ABCs of psychology. And I don't know how it works in Spanish, but in English, the A is for affect. Affect is emotion. The B is for behavior, the action that we take. And the C is the cognition, the thought. Now, when we want to bring about change in general, it's good to think about the ABC as different pathways, and all three, not one, two, or three. When it comes to hope, all three are essential, especially when hope is scarce or difficult to come by, such as the case is with our world today, where we see so much, unhappiness and distress, and very troublesome situations all around us. So what do I mean by the ABC? So A is for affect, emotion. We need to feel inspired. We need to feel excited. This is the willpower. Yes, I can. This is what great politicians do, or great leaders in general. They inspire their followers. You can do anything. And the emotion here is important. Emotion leads to motion, which is the second part. Behavior, the B. Behavior is important. Albert Bandura, who did research on self-efficacy, which is essentially having self-confidence, said, yeah, you can stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself, I'm good, I'm capable, I'm strong, I'm amazing. And maybe it will help, maybe it won't. Some people benefit from it, others don't. But what will help, he says, is if you put yourself on the line and do something. Put effort in. Experiment. Try things out. In other words, take action. In other words, behave. As opposed to just think about it or feel it. Now, why is that so important? Before I go to the why, let me give you another example of research around behavior. So I did my research, my PhD work on self-esteem. And two of the people whose work I built my research on were Bednar, B-E-D-N-A-R, and Peterson. Not Chris Peterson, another Peterson. Bednar and Peterson. And they did their work on self-esteem. And specifically, what they showed is that self-esteem, how confident we are about ourselves, doesn't depend so much on what we tell ourselves. Oh, you're great, you're amazing, you're terrific. Or even what others tell us. We think as parents, we want strong self-esteem for our children. We need to tell them that they're fantastic. Hardly has any effect. Rather, what they found was that self-esteem depends on whether we cope or avoid. Cope means putting ourselves on the line, trying things. Avoid means running away from challenges. If you cope, you'll have high self-esteem. If you avoid, you'll have low self-esteem. And notice, they didn't say, if you succeed, you'll have high self-esteem. If you fail, you'll have low self-esteem. They said, if you'll cope, if you'll try, win or lose, you'll gain high self-esteem. If you don't try, your self-esteem will be lower. Now let's get to the why. Why is coping, putting yourself on the line, the B of the ABC, behavior? Why is that so important? Because of what Daryl Bem, B-E-M, psychologist from Cornell University, called self-perception theory. Self-perception theory. What's self-perception theory? It's basically the idea that we form perceptions, ideas about ourselves in the same way that we form perceptions or ideas about others. In other words, what we see ourselves doing determines what we think about ourselves. Now, Arlen, if you saw a person running away from challenges, avoiding difficulties, hardships, avoiding effort, what conclusion would you derive about that person? Are they a person with high self-confidence or low self-confidence? Obvious, right? Low self-confidence. They're running away from challenges. They're not confident in their ability. What if you saw someone coping? And even if they fail, they still try and they try again. They try one business, Hewlett & Packard, and then they try another and they fail, but they continue to trying. What would you say about them? They have confidence. They have high self-esteem. And just like we derive conclusions about others by observing them, by observing particular behaviors, we derive conclusions about ourselves by observing our behavior. So if I see myself cope, high self-esteem, avoid low self-esteem. That's why it's so important to cultivate hope, belief in ourselves. It's so important to behave, not just to be inspired, but to also do. And then there is the C, the cognitive part. You know, Serena Williams physically was incredible. And by the way, I hear she's making a comeback now. She was an incredible tennis player physically. No less so, she had an incredible mind. She was able to analyze a game and to think about ways in which she could win. So the cognitive element is critical as well for understanding way power. And that's why we need the A, the emotion, affect, inspiration, the B, the behavior, the action, the coping, and the C, the cognition, the thought, the understanding, for bringing about change, for cultivating hope.
Absolutely. And when you're acting, it's about your self-perception in terms of your self-esteem, but also it has to do, as you mentioned, with the level of, like it counteracts levels of depression, which is also very important. When you are able to act and be participant of the creation of whatever you want, it brings you out of depression. And I just wanted to share before we open the floor for questions, but and I know it ties a little bit more to the collective again, because you know that's my passion. But I remember I was on a trip and I was in the beach, and I like to go walking or running in the beach, and I would go every morning and I would see garbage all over, you know, plastic bottles, plastic bags, and every single day I would come back and I was so angry and so mad, and the world is horrible and nobody cares, and how can this happen? And suddenly one day I'm like, you know something, I'm gonna take a bag with me, and on my way back, of course I don't want to pick up garbage on my way, you know, far away, but when I come back, I'll begin picking garbage every single day, you know? And I felt much better. I knew I was not going to solve, you know, the problem, the pollution problem in, you know, on the beach, but I really felt very different. And to my surprise, Tal, suddenly one day I go out and I see another person picking up garbage, and he approached me and he said, you know something, I saw you yesterday and I felt this was a very good idea. And hope is something that can be contagious as well. it can become a cultural attitude, and it can become a signature strength, not only of a person, but of a community. And I would like to, well, of course, if you want to say something about it, but I know it's late for you, and maybe there are a few questions that we can take from
Yes.
from the participants today.
Yes, I'd love to hear the question. Just one comment about what you said. We know that hope is contagious. We know that kindness is contagious. We know that appreciation is contagious. So Gandhi's statement about being the change that you want to see in the world is not just nice words. There's a very strong scientific foundation to this claim. You want to see more kindness in the world, be kind. You want to see more hope in the world, express hopefulness. You want more people to pick up garbage, be the change you want to see in the world.
Thank you, Tal. So we have a few minutes for questions before we share with you a very nice video. And so I don't know if there are any questions. I saw a question written.
I think Pablo Augusto, you have a question,
okay,
right?
Sure. Pablo.
Yeah, and generally you can go below to reactions and put your raise hand, and then we'll call on you. But Pablo Augusto,
Okay.
please.
Hello, thank you to be here. I'm very glad. It's the first time, Arlen and Tal, to be with you and all together. As we have little time, I'll try to get straight to the point. I don't know if it is a real question, but something I heard from other people, from a psychologist, a Spanish psychologist. She told a story about lucky, and she asked herself why there were people that are more lucky than others. And she began to study about it. And what she found is that precisely what you told us about the knowledge, cognitive, helps you to be more aware of the reality. So the more you grow up in your knowledge, the more you can see the reality. And if you see the reality, then you can change it. If you cannot see it, you don't. And it's very important. Well, we can talk a lot about it, because I think that one of the problems today is that there are many things that are blocking us to see the reality. Instead of getting amazed of the reality, are fascinating us with a lot of images and sounds. But that's the first point I wanted to tell you, Tal or Arlen, and to hear something about you, from you. And the other point is about self-esteem. Just one little thing, that be courage to fail, to know that if I fail, there's no problem. And there is another psychologist from Canada that he tells that if you fail, you are perhaps you're not going straight ahead, but you are going. Perhaps you're going to the right, to the left, but you are not in the place where you were. If you do not nothing, then you don't learn. And from the fails, you can learn, and that also is something that you are winning. And well, from those things, I hope I could hear something from you, Paul, please.
Yeah, thank you for this. Well, I have a lot to say. Arlen, I'll start maybe, and then you can add. For a long time, I've been studying luck, and specifically the work of Richard Wiseman. Richard Wiseman, and his name is very relevant. He is indeed a wise man. Teaches in Hertfordshire in England. And he was fascinated by why are some people luckier than others. And, you know, sometimes it's just because of things that happen that are completely outside of our control, you know, such as, you know, Pablo, you and I can both buy the lottery ticket and, you know, a million other people will. And I don't think there is much that you can do to increase your chances other than actually buying the ticket or buying a few tickets. But that's, you know, luck as we know it. But what he also found was that when you look at people who are lucky as identified by others, so we can all think, oh, you know, this friend of ours is you know, lucky or luckier than others. They're actually things that they do that make them luckier. What are these things? Actually, the very things that we talked about now. One of them is they believe that they're lucky. They believe, in other words, they have hope that there will be a fortunate outcome, that things will turn out well. And these positive expectations become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's one element. The second element is they reframe negative experiences into positive ones. So the example that he gives is they studied people in California whose homes were destroyed by fire. And that's a terrible thing, obviously. But the lucky people among them would always say something to the effect of, you know, my home was destroyed. It's terrible, awful. But, you know, we came out fine. No one was hurt. We're so lucky. Or I was able to save the family album. You know, the only pictures of my grandparents. I feel so lucky. So even in the midst of hardship, they still found something that they appreciated, were grateful for, valued. So that was the second element that made them luckier. The third element that made them luckier was what we just talked about. They continued trying, experimenting, coping rather than avoiding. The fourth element, they listened to their intuition. They trusted their inner voice. And this, it turns out, is the scientific foundation for luck. Anyway, I really recommend you go online and check out the work of Richard Wiseman. It's really very, very powerful and very applicable. Now, the idea of failure. Look at the work of Dean Simonton, professor at University of California, Davis. In his book, The Origins of Genius, he talks about how the people whom we see as geniuses, you know, the greatest artists, you know, the Van Goghs of the world, the Georgia O'Keeffes of the world, the Da Vinci's of the world, and the greatest scientists, the Marie Curies of the world, the Einsteins of the world. What's unique to those greatest scientists and artists, what distinguishes them from so many others whom we've never heard of, is the number of failures that they experienced. By a long shot. So they experienced 10 times more failures than the average scientist or the average artist. In other words, they tried and tried again. They failed and they learned from the failure, and then they continued. Also, I would highly recommend, so The Origins of Genius by Dean Simonton. Another book I really recommend is by Adam Grant called Originals. Originals. Arlen?
Well, I think you shared so much. I was just wanting to add in reference to another question that somebody was asking about the relationship between imagination and hope. Just to add a little bit more, that it is very much related, and it has a lot to do with what you're talking about, with trying a lot, with failing and finding another way to go, and looking at all the possibilities, and also to be able to not fit in this capacity. These people who are named originals, or in Adam Grant's book, it's people who try things in different ways and who are not bound by an ABC model in terms of the right formula. They try. They aren't really held by making mistakes or by the norm necessarily. They create a different set of rules as well.
Yeah.
So okay, I know it's too late. I don't see there is an important question before we show a video, which is what can we do to develop hope so that sadness or despair doesn't keep us from living a good life?
As you know, Arlen, and as our students know, I'm a strong proponent of the acceptance and commitment therapy approach, or in short, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. And what the acceptance and commitment therapy approach is all about is, as a first step, accepting the emotion. So what do I do about sadness? The first step, accept it, embrace it. Because if I say to myself, don't be sad, or you shouldn't be sad, I'll actually become more sad. In the words of Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, what you resist persists. So the first step in dealing with sadness or frustration, or any emotion for that matter, is acceptance. And then the question is, what do I commit to? Many psychologists may disagree with me, because psychology is very much about emotions and thoughts. But to me, what's more important in life is not how you feel. It's actually what you do. Because I can feel sad and still do things that are meaningful to me. I can feel envy towards a friend and still be kind and generous towards them. So what I do matters more than what I feel, especially given the fact that over time, my behavior will affect my emotion. So if I continue doing things that are meaningful to me, even when I feel sad and don't feel like doing anything, I will actually feel better as a result. If I feel envy, but I continue being kind and generous, I will also begin to feel kind and generous over time. So the key when I choose the best version of myself is to ask myself, what do I want to do? What do I actually want my life to look like? And then just do it.
Thank you. So I am going to brag a little bit about the amazing certificate program that we're starting next week again, because that really cultivates hope. It gives a lot of tools for people to live a meaningful and a meaningful life where you are connected to yourself, where you feel you have a good relationship with your own person, with others, and where you can contribute to a higher cause and find the way to savor your life on a daily basis. So I'm going to ask Renata to share a small video, and then we can share some information for those people that would like to join.
The Certificate in Happiness Studies brings together people from over 70 countries. Like-minded, like-hearted individuals who are playing their part in the happiness revolution, spreading well-being, spreading goodness, spreading success in their homes, in their organizations, in their communities. Join us, be part of the happiness revolution. Make a difference in your life and in the life of others.
So I can see that we have some fellow journers of our certificate program here today, and Tal, I hope both of us and those of you that are here that have experienced this certificate can share a few words about it, because I personally have been involved in the certificate program for almost 10 years, and the changes that I have been able to witness in myself and in my colleagues and friends that I have met over the years has been amazing. I was this morning at another webinar with you at 6 a.m. in the morning, Mexico time, watching a beautiful program that has been launched by one of our community members, Dana, who has been dreaming about a project and has been able to not only make it happen, but make it happen with this community and with your help. And we have so many students that are seeing their dreams come true. And I don't think that there is anything more hopeful than that. So can you share, Tal, a little bit about the structure of the program that you created and the reason why?
Arlen, thank you for these kind words. And to answer your question is actually very easy and very simple. The purpose of the certificate program is, one, to help participants become happier. Two, to help participants help others become happier. And the others may be their children or their families, or the others may be their coachee if they're a coach, or their client if they're a therapist, or their employees if they're managers, or their students if they're teachers. Now, why? for two reasons, once again. Why happier? Because people want to become happier as an end in itself. It's part of our nature that we want to become happier, and it's part of our nature that we want the people we care about to become happier. But there is another reason. Not just because happiness is a good thing in and of itself, as an end in itself, but also because happiness is a means towards other ends. If we increase levels of happiness, even by a little bit, 3-4%, we actually become more creative and innovative. We become more motivated. Our employees become more creative, innovative, and motivated. Teamwork improves, relationships improves. Performance in school or in the workplace improves. We actually live longer, not just better, also longer. We become healthier as a result of increased happiness. So no matter where you look, increasing levels of well-being as an end in itself or as a means towards other ends is a good thing. And this is what the certificate is about. I do not teach it, and I don't think any of us, Arlen, you as a professor and the other professors, we don't teach it merely for its academic value and interest. Yes, of course, we want it to be interesting, and of course, we value theory and research. But the main reason is because we really believe and know that it can increase others' happiness levels, and through that make our world better, happier, healthier.
Yeah, so the certificate program is a year-long program. It starts next week, and you will be able to learn about the SPIRE model, a model of whole person well-being that Tal created that encompasses 5 areas: the spiritual realm, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional, which are basically pathways for you to build a better life for yourself. And it's all based on science, and it invites for you to try it and to do some research, as Tal called it. It's really understanding how you work and what works for you so that you create your own formula to live better and to lead a healthier, happier life. And I would like to say there is an amazing student and alumni club that has lots of resources. It's absolutely filled with energy and creativity and knowledge and a profound commitment to share the experience. And when you join the program, you are part of the program for life. You can access all the material. You can be part of the club. You can participate in all of the activities, both online and in the retreats that happen around the world in person. We had a retreat in New Jersey, in Italy, in Colombia. We are very happy that the next retreat is going to happen in Mexico in November. Yes, I see some hands going. So it's really a blessing in this world to be part of a community that focuses on making themselves better, on being grateful for the beauty that surrounds us, and to make a contribution to make the world a better place. So I know it's very late. Please write us. You can write us an email to answer any questions that you may have. The email where you can write us is you can write to me directly, Arlen at EB. Can you write, Renata, please the email address? And we have a special discount for you. We're going to send you all the information tomorrow in an email. And I want to say thank you. You raise my levels of hope and happiness. And I appreciate very much that so late in your day, Tal, after so many hours in Zoom today that you had, you are still here with us. And I also am very thankful for all of you who connected to be part of this webinar. And once you're part of this community, you're part of this community forever. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Arlen, and thank you all for being here. And I hope you can join us on this journey together.
Adventure.
On this adventure, sure. Thank you so much. And you can find the registration for the certificate program. I'm gonna paste this again in the chat so that you can join if you so choose. Thank you so much and have a great evening. I hope you rest, Tal. I know it's late for you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Arlen. Bye-bye, everyone. Great to see you.